This morning, scientists can tell how fast you're aging from a single brain scan. Joining me now is Professor Ahmad Hariri of Duke University. Professor Hariri, great to see you. Thanks for joining us on the program this morning.
It's my pleasure, Jeffrey. Thank you very much for having me.
And you and the team at Duke, and I think there are some other entities that are involved in this research, you've made a lot of progress in terms of looking at the human brain, looking at scanning. Let's talk about the power of the MRI. I know the MRI because I can look at my tendons, I can look at part of my body, but this is really a powerful tool that can be used to assess your aging.
Yes, exactly, Jeffrey. And I would be remiss not to mention the University of Otago, where all the primary data collection occurs in New Zealand. They are longtime partners and collaborators. As many of us, especially as we get older, are asked to submit to an MRI scan, I think it's not a wholly unfamiliar technology. And what we do is we use very strong magnets, these scanners, to look at the brain and to look at specific details of the brain. It's gray matter, it's white matter, how big the ventricles are. And it's that information that we can pull from a single MRI image that we can in turn use to measure how fast a person is aging. That's really the breakthrough that Dunedin-Packney, what we call our measure, represents, using information from the brain through a scan that many of us either have or will have collected as part of our care, our health care, and to use it in a way that really provides information that otherwise wouldn't be available, and that is how fast a person's whole body is aging at any given moment.
And just to follow up on that, your point is well taken. This is a test, for lack of a better term, that's accessible to anyone here in the United States. Maybe with some limited, maybe there's some limits there, but pretty much this is something that's accessible to everyone here.
Absolutely, either as part of a larger medical practice or university medical center, but also more and more there are private radiology clinics where a person can go and pay for a scan and then have the information available to them directly, not necessarily managed through a clinical setting. But it's really that clinical setting that we feel has the most potential gain from this measure, because as part of routine care, in fact, just late last year, the Alzheimer's Association published its new guidelines for both primary care and specialty care regarding the diagnosis of suspected Alzheimer's disease. And what was once an optional tool to the clinician is now regarded as an essential tool, and that is a brain MRI. So we're hopeful that as part of this shift in clinical practice, Dunedin-Packney can even enter many more workflows and potentially help clinicians make decisions about the prognosis of their patients, and also we think down the road what would be the best treatment options based on this measure of how fast they're aging.
Doctor, how important, when would you get the MRI? Would you get it in middle age? Like I'm 53. Would you get it around my age? Would you get it at age 35? When's the best time, based on the research, to get the MRI to look at the brain?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jeffrey, and a question that has actually many sub-questions that are important for us to think about. I'm also 53. I think we're both too young to really worry about it, but in all seriousness, we really think that the measure, this Dunedin-Packney measure, and its ability to tell us how fast we're aging becomes most useful in midlife. So it was developed in this cohort of individuals in New Zealand when they were all 45 years old. And it really is a measure of how fast they were aging from their mid-20s into their mid-40s. And so we have data to suggest that the measure can inform in an accurate way how fast you're aging as early as 25. But we really think the most clinically useful window would be around midlife, around 45, in part because that's when aging really starts to accelerate in important ways and diverge for different people. Some of us will start to age faster than others. And midlife is becoming a really important window in trying to treat and prevent Alzheimer's disease, because attempts to do so much later in life, in our 70s and 80s, have been largely unsuccessful. So the move now is to identify individuals who are at risk decades earlier, before they have symptoms or even could be diagnosed clinically, and begin to make change, lifestyle, diet, maybe even drug regimens that can help prevent them from ultimately suffering from dementia.
And doctor, are clinicians, primary care physicians, specialists like yourself, are they prepared to actively take this scan and act upon it? For example, to advise a patient, you need to change these 3 things or these 4 things, or this is what's happening. Are they armed with the education to provide the best guidance and advice to their patients?
Yeah, that is, again, another outstanding question, Jeffrey. I would say that our colleagues in research are certainly already well equipped to begin to use this measure in their own studies, whether it's of predicting diagnosis and conversion to dementia, or evaluating the efficacy of a particular treatment. But we are not yet at the point where a clinician in a rural practice or even an urban practice has the information they would need in order to make a decision about the care of their patients. And the main missing point, a part of that, is the lack of norms. So with all of the health sentinel markers of how healthy we are, or unfortunately how unhealthy we may be, like cholesterol, blood pressure, various other blood biomarkers, even height, weight, body mass, they're useful because we have a norm. We have a large data set where we can compare any one individual to the norms we see in the population. And we can then determine, okay, when you exceed this norm by, several units, that's a time to become concerned, to maybe think about a drug to lower cholesterol, or more exercise, better diet to lower heart rate and blood pressure. That's what we don't have for this brain measure, Dunedin-Packney, but we're in fact actively working with colleagues both at Penn and in Cambridge and in London to develop exactly those norms. What we're benefiting from tremendously is the fact that the neuroscience community, especially those of us who collect these brain MRs, we are sharing the information with each other in a way that we've never been able to before. And so it means we can access hundreds of thousands of scans across the whole lifespan. And doing so allows us to create these normative reference charts. And once we have those, I think we can then begin to educate clinicians to use the measure in a way that actually benefits the care of their patients and ultimately the prognosis and their well-being. That is to say, you are 53, like we are, for example, your Dunedin-Packney score suggests that you are aging, 2 times faster than the typical 53-year-old. And we know that that puts you at significantly increased risk for developing, if not Alzheimer's, maybe having a stroke or even heart disease. So because Dunedin-Packney measures how fast our whole body is aging, it can inform the diagnosis of many different conditions, not just those related to our brains.
And I would imagine that as you gather, not you in particular, but as researchers gather this information, you could have multiple generations within a family. And so that could actually help. I'm talking probably years down the line, but that could be actually provide predictive results as to whether a certain, certain tranche of people might be more, willing or not willing, but could get some of these diseases like dementia, like Alzheimer's, et cetera.
Absolutely. And with more and more researchers adopting the measure, which, by the way, is freely available to the research community, That was a very important element of the work. We wanted everyone to be able to use this measure. We will not only have more and more confidence in the norms, but we can start to ask even kind of more detailed questions, like what are the changes or differences in our DNA and our genes that may contribute to faster or slower aging. And if we can do that, we can start to perhaps assess a person's risk for faster aging much earlier in life, even before they get to their adulthood or midlife.
Yep, and you can then adjust or help them adjust with lifestyle changes. Dr. Hariri, we're going to have to leave it there. Great research. Great to meet you. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
It's my pleasure, Jeffrey. Thank you again for featuring our work. We really appreciate it.
Well, that wraps up this morning's program. We're back again tomorrow. Till tomorrow, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.